It goes all the way from here all the way to the Straits of Mackinac. It's pretty unbelievable. And it's dual lane when you get up in Michigan. It's almost limited access, so we just went right straight up.
Yeah.
Anyway, and broke its leg. Let me tell you, it's the outside cats that are the liability.
But they hurt.
When you go to our kingdom and you pay that big bucks that makes the cat legs, and then you get home, boy, it's all crazy. Your heart, my heart's in the right place, but not mine.
All right, welcome to First Universalist of New Madison on this first day that really feels like fall. It's nice and brisk. First day we haven't had the doors open and the fans on blowing through. And so people are already complaining that it's too cold in here. So we will have heat on. We do have heat available. We don't have air conditioning, but we do have heat whenever we need it. So, and I think there's another couple sweaters and maybe a parka or two back there if you're cold. We can sit you up. Yeah, there you go. And I'd be glad to give somebody my sweater because that's still too warm for me. Do we have any announcements?
Just have a brief announcement. Our board is meeting by phone conference on Wednesday evening at like 7 o'clock. So if anyone would like to join us, they're welcome to. As always, we try to keep our board meetings very transparent. And if you need a telephone number, just see me and I will get it for you. And you're welcome to join us. It's going to be a short meeting, but part of our discussion will be on what we want to really, Lou's been working on a lot of different angles for some outreach activities with Ukraine. Maybe collecting votes, all iffy right now. Maybe just collecting money, maybe trying to involve a couple more churches. So we're going to talk about the Ukrainian outreach that we would like to do in some way, maybe small at first, larger in subsequent years if we have to do that. But that's pretty much the item of business. And there's just a couple minor other items of business, but nothing major, but you're welcome to join us. And we'll, of course, put out minutes after the meeting as well.
And the meeting is a phone in, and you can actually contribute. You can talk over the phone or listen over the phone. If you just want to listen, then go ahead and dial in. You don't have to talk. You can listen to the conversation. So everybody's welcome for that and encouraged to attend. Any other announcements? Hope everything went well last week. I'm sorry I missed Mike's thing. Nobody must have videoed it because I didn't get a copy to put up on the post. So
I went low tech last week.
Okay.
But if anybody would like a replay, a recap, I should say, I'd be glad to do that during the coffee hour.
Okay. Let's see. We went to the reason we weren't here and the reason we didn't video anything is we went to Mackinac Island, which is supposed to be Mackinac Island. The reason people pronounce it Mackinac is the French are the ones who discovered the island, and in French it's spelled Mackinac, but in French, kind of like Versailles and Versailles or Russia and Russia, there is a different way and a correct way to pronounce it, and the correct pronunciation is Mackinac. But I have a good time with Mackinac, so you can use Mackinac. It's kind of got a lot of ring to it, so I may do either one. Feel free to do either one of those. What you're going to get today is kind of a recap. I took a lot of pictures, but the things I found online were much better than the stuff I took, so the only one, you get one or two I think that I took. And it may be a little long, but we'll cut it off if it gets too long. If it gets too boring, let me know. I found the place fascinating. They do not allow automobiles or cars on Mackinac. Yeah. So it's for me, for people who like horses, it's like being in horse heaven.
Did you sit on the big porch?
We did not sit on the big porch. Do you know why?
They charge.
I'll give you the site and you can go look at it. It's really an interesting video, but I'm not going to show it today. The ones I'm going to show are a little shorter and give you the highlights. But the Grand Hotel is pretty impressive, even their carriage, and there was nobody there. 2 and 3 times we stopped by and there was nobody in the fire station, so I was kind of curious to look at their equipment. Okay, we're kind of going way on and on here. The prelude, Christians, we have met to worship. Christians, we have met to worship, which reminds me, 2 weeks ago we had a visitor. I'm assuming he didn't come back last week. The young man that was here.
There was somebody here last week, though. Different ones.
There was different people here last week.
Yeah.
Well, we're doing good then. We're getting at least them in once. Be nice if they could get them back again sometime, but if you get them in once, that's a good start. So, okay. Chalice lighting is, since we're at Mackinac Island, Mackinac Island, everything is animal-centric there, so that's where we're going today. We light this chalice in honor of the animal realm, furred and hoofed, two-legged, four-legged, many-legged, fanged and clawed, gentle and fierce, wild and tame. May we remember that all animals are our relatives, worthy of our care and respect. Our opening hymn is number 69, Give Thanks. Give thanks. Once again, the lyrics on a lot of these songs I think are really memorable, and for people at home, if you don't have a hymnal, you don't know what they are, so I'll read the first verse. Give thanks for the corn and the wheat that are reaped, for labor well done, for barns that are heaped, for the sun and the dew and the sweet honeycomb, for the rose and the song and the harvest brought home. Another good autumn song. All right, affirmation. May the waters be gathered here, by Susan Carlson. May the waters gathered here remind us of what each of us brings to this community and of the waters that nourished us before we were even born, that continue to give us sustenance and energy for our life's journey and for all creatures on this earth. May we gratefully continue to swim to the other side. That's a reference to the water ceremony, which we may want to do that this year if anybody wants to. Bring water from a place you visited or a place you would have liked to have visited, or even from your home with everybody make a little contribution of what their summer was like. The reason I threw that in is because, and I didn't actually bring it, I should have brought some water from Lake Superior. Mackinac Island is between Lake Superior and Lake Michigan, and actually it's real close to Lake Huron, which is the top. And they have a nice sweatshirt up there with a nice saying, the Great Lakes, no salt, no sharks. But it is cold. It is really cold. All right, our children's story. Let me start you out on, let me do this one. This is the ferry on the way over. This is the Star Line. And it is what they call a jet boat, which is kind of interesting. 240 people on this boat, and it's like being on a speedboat. It throws a rooster tail out the back, which is pretty incredible. And I can give you a kind of a... That's basically a promo for Starline, but it's a fun ride. $30 round trip. It takes about 20 minutes each way. If you wait for the right one, they'll actually take you under the Mackinac Bridge, which would be fun to see, but we didn't want to wait another 2 hours for that one, so we just took the one straight over, so I missed that one. Okay, this is our children's story about horses.
Horses. Horses started out as much smaller creatures, but over 50 million years, they became the animals we know and love today. Nowadays, there are 60 million horses on Earth. Humans domesticated horses over 5,000 years ago. Horses live about 25 years and are herbivores, meaning they only eat plants. They can run shortly after being born, and as adults, horses can gallop up to 27 miles per hour. There are 4 different types of movement that horses use. From slowest to fastest, they are walking, trotting, cantering, and galloping. Horses have bigger eyes than any other land animal, and since their eyes are on either side of their head, they can see almost a full 360 degrees around themselves. They have only 2 blind spots, directly in front of them and directly behind them. Horses are measured using hands. The tallest horse recorded was 21 hands tall. Horses can sleep lying down or standing up, but it uses more energy to lie down than it does to just sleep standing. There are 205 bones in a horse's body. That's 1 less bone than humans have. Horses graze almost all day, and in one day they drink up to 10 gallons of water. Horses can let people and other horses know how they're feeling by using their eyes, ears, and noses. If you see a horse with flared nostrils and its ears back, stay away. That means the horse is upset. Horses can't breathe through their mouths, and they can't vomit either. Horse hooves are like fingernails. They are constantly growing. They have to have their hooves trimmed every 4 to 6 weeks. Horses have excellent senses, particularly eyesight, hearing, and balance. They also have great memories, and if you've worked with a horse for a while, it most likely recognizes you. Horses are awesome. What's your favorite thing about horses?
And my favorite thing about Mackinac, you can actually rent a horse and buggy. This is Sky. We rented him and his buggy, and Tara and I traveled around the island for about 2 hours. And for most people, that'd be pretty boring. But for me, I never get to drive my horse because he's a sulky racing horse, and the people that race him say, no, we're not putting any amateur in the sulky. So that was my only chance to get to drive a horse. How many people know what a hand is? A hand came from England. Well, actually, it came from the Middle Ages, but a hand is how they measure horses' height. Curly happens to be 16 hands, which is pretty tall, but nothing close to the 27 of the biggest one. But a hand, they actually used to measure the height of a horse before they had rulers by putting their hands up. So a hand is actually 4 inches. So if you take 16 hands and multiply it by 4 inches, that's how tall he actually is, 5 feet something at the top, at his withers, and that's just at the shoulder bones. The other thing is, she said their horses have 4 gaits. There are a couple more that people have trained into horses. They're parade gaits. How many of you have ever seen a Tennessee walking horse? If you've been to a horse show, that is the most impressive thing for lazy people. That is like being in a rocking chair. Pretty incredible. And if you've seen the Lipizzaner stallions from Spain, they're pretty incredible too, and they have created some new gaits for them. All right, joys and concerns. Of course, Florida is the top of the list.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard the story of Lee County, Fort Myers. Every county, north and south, declared an emergency and called for evacuations the day before, at least the day before, some more than that. Lee County dawdled and dragged their feet and didn't want to inconvenience people. So when they finally called for an evacuation, it was too late for people to get out. So the death toll is 2 or 3 times higher in Lee County than any place else in Florida, because people didn't know, or they should be smart enough. My brother is one of those. My brother just moved from Illinois to Venice, Florida, which is just south of Sarasota, right where the I went through. I'm not sure how to describe him. I called him and said, you need to get out of there. Oh, it's not going to hit here. It's not going to be a problem. They've never had a hurricane here in 100 years. Basically, if they haven't had it in 100 years, you're due. So they didn't leave until the very last minute, and then they did leave and went up north towards Gainesville, and they emailed us or texted us and said they had escaped and everything was fine. So then they went back. They got home yesterday in the evening. They didn't gas their car up. They don't have any canned food. They didn't have any food in Gainesville to bring down with them. They said, we're just going to go stay at a hotel. That'll be fine. You know, we don't have any electricity.
No hotels.
Yeah. You think the hotels have electricity? You think everybody in Florida is not staying at a hotel? I don't know what to tell my brother. I didn't say anything. I just said, you know, if you need to, you can always come up here and stay with us. It's only like an 18-hour drive. So I don't think he'll do that. But that just goes to show the mentality of the people who moved to Florida. They just assume that the world, they live in a gated community where everything is taken care of, everything is managed for them, they don't have a worry in the world, and they still think that they don't have a worry in the world because someone else is going to take care of them. And I don't have any explanation for that. It kind of explains what Florida is all about. All right, the other thing, Ukraine. That's getting worse and worse. Russia has declared the Ukraine as part of Russia now, and then immediately lost Leiden. I can't remember the name of the town, but the Ukrainians actually took back one of the cities that the Russians had claimed. So, and I would not put it past them to actually use nuclear weapons. That is the scariest thought on earth. But those people are truly, truly crazy. So, anything else? Everybody's healthy, I hope. Okay. Sierra, we don't want to forget her, even though she's actually her funeral's over with. That was in Indianapolis. And she's the police officer from Richmond who was shot. And I guess I will throw in our Ohio legislature, which has eliminated the concealed carry law, which means anybody can carry a gun, and nobody, even the police, can't even ask them about it unless they have some reason to. And that's what happens. Somebody stopped for a traffic stop, and he pulls out a gun and shoots a police officer who had no idea this person was that dangerous. So, a very, very sad occurrence. All right, one more candle for those people, for those thoughts, for those fears, for those hopes and dreams which we're not able to voice, and maybe we're not able even to realize in our own minds, in our own hearts. I pray that you find some peace and are able to come to terms with those desires and fears and hopes. All right. The message will be Mackinac. Let's see. That one's a history one. This one is Mackinac in the winter, and this one is a good introduction. Oh, let me do Mackinac in the winter. First of all, I guess I can do this one first. Let me know what this is.
Probably a snowpacker.
Yeah, it's a roller, a snow roller. I asked the guys, the permanent people that live there permanently, they were unloading one of the ferries on the dock, so I walked up and asked him, what do you do in the wintertime if you don't have any vehicles? He said, well, we do have a snowplow. And I'll give you the little the introduction thing, but when you have horses back in the 1800s, even up into the 1940s, they kept snow on the road, but they had to pack it down for the sleighs and the sleds. And if you've seen packed down snow, if you've ever been on 121 by New Paris with the sledding hill there, they pack that snow down and then people ride on it and ride on it and ride on it. That snow lasts at least 2 weeks into the spring when all the rest of the snow is melted off. That's how they got around in the wintertime with sleds and sleighs and bobsleds, because they packed the snow down on the road, and then actually the roads were nicer in the winter than in the summer, because in the summer they had giant potholes and mud holes. In the winter it was nice, smooth snowpack. And the interesting thing, my grandfather was from Sebewaing, Michigan. That's where my dad grew up. In those days, and he still had the equipment in his barn, every farmer had the responsibility for a mile or 2 miles or whatever road was in front of their house. They had a road grader and they had a roller, and they packed it and they rolled it, and they took care of the road in front of their house before the township took over. So that was responsibility, citizen responsibility, and people sharing. Now, I'm sure different farmers shared with each other and helped each other out, just like they still do today. All right, let's go ahead and do the introduction. These are two guys who are really interesting.
Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Laurent.
And today we are in beautiful Mackinac Island.
Or as I like to call it, Mackinac.
No, I grew up in Michigan, and as a true Michigander, I spent all my summers up north, in Traverse City, Petoskey, Charlevoix.
But we also love to visit northern Michigan in the fall and enjoy the beautiful fall colors.
But Mackinac holds a special place in my heart.
To me, it's the gem of northern Michigan. And in this video, we're going to show you our favorite 10 things to do on Mackinac Island.
So let's go! Mackinac Island is located in the Straits of Mackinac, a 3-mile wide strait that connects Lake Michigan to Lake Huron.
And the strait also separates the upper peninsula from the lower peninsula of Michigan.
And Mackinac Island is on the Lake Huron side of the strait. And since 1957, there's been a 5-mile long bridge over the strait,
The Mackinac Bridge.
which at the time of its construction was the longest suspension bridge in the world.
Unless you can afford a charter flight to the island's small airport, the only way to Mackinac Island is to take the ferry from the mainland.
There are 2 different ferry companies, Starline and Shepherd's.
We've used both in the past, and to be honest, we don't think there's much of a difference between the two.
Both companies offer hourly rides from Mackinac City on the lower peninsula and from St. Ignace on the upper peninsula.
For most people driving from down south, Mackinac City would be more convenient.
But catching the ferry from St. Ignace will give you the opportunity to drive over the bridge.
The ferry ride normally takes 20 minutes, but some of the ferries take a detour to go under the bridge.
And if you have an extra 10 minutes to spare in your vacation, we strongly recommend you choose one of these ferries.
We were able to take really cool shots from underneath the bridge.
But if you're going to sit on the upper deck, be sure to bundle up.
The ferries are super fast and it gets pretty windy out there.
Once you get off of the ferry, you'll have to travel around the island.
And one of the best features of Mackinac Island is that cars have been banned since 1898.
And the best way to move around is to take a horse-drawn carriage.
It might look a little bit cheesy at first, but it's actually a lot of fun.
There are several different horse-drawn carriage options.
If you're staying on the island overnight, most hotels will provide a shuttle from the ferry dock to the hotel.
If not, you have the option to take a taxi. They're available 24 hours a day and they charge by the distance.
The carriage tours come becoming a tourist destination in the mid-1800s when the development of railroads made it easier for rich people from Chicago, Detroit, and the East Coast to travel to northern Michigan.
And even though Main Street has a bit of a Disneyland feel to it, it's actually been like that from day one, and all the buildings are authentic.
But if you keep walking past Marquette Park, you end up in a much quieter.
Explore is Market Street.
It's just one street over, parallel to Main Street.
It has some of the oldest buildings in the city, and lots of little shops and bed and breakfasts.
It's really cute.
It is. And number 4 on our list is walking the deck of the Grand Hotel.
The Grand Hotel was built in 1887 and is the most recognizable building on the island.
It's a huge building with 400 rooms and a 660-foot long deck. It's the longest in
Cheapest
the world.
room is
That's longer than
$800
two
a night.
football fields.
When the railroad started expanding in the 1800s, railroad companies needed destinations to attract tourists and give them reasons to ride their train.
So they started building hotels, like the Grand Hotels in Mackinac.
But very few of them survived because
That's what's so amazing about the Grand Hotel. It's still here 130 years later and it hasn't burned down.
knock on wood. We also enjoyed walking inside the hotel and going up to the bar and the cupola at the very top of the hotel.
But to me, the most spectacular was the main dining room. It really felt like nothing had changed since the hotel opened in 1887.
And you could almost expect to see Jackie Kennedy or Esther Williams enjoying dinner alongside us.
In addition to horse-drawn carriages, bikes are also a main form of transportation on Mackinac Island.
And biking around the island is number 5 on our list.
Lakeshore Drive, a circular loop around the island, is only 8 miles long.
So biking around the island should only take you a couple of hours, depending on how many stops you want to make along the way.
You can rent a bike pretty much anywhere in town.
There are lots of different bike rental stores, but they all charge more or less the same price for the same bike. Your decision is really about which type of bike you want to rent.
If you are going to stay on Lakeshore Drive where it's all flat, you don't need a bike with a lot of gears.
But if you're going to bike on the trails inside the island, a mountain bike is probably better.
We really wanted to try a tandem bike, but it just looked too complicated for us.
More than 80% of Mackinac Island is a state park, so once you leave town, you're pretty much in the wilderness.
But British Landing, which is almost the halfway point, is a good place to stop and grab a bite.
And apparently some of the tourists engage in reckless biking, if we believe all the signs we saw on the side of the road. And number 6 on our list is visiting Fort Mackinac.
Because of its strategic location at the junctions of Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, and Lake Superior, Mackinac Island has always had a military significance.
The British built Fort Mackinac in 1780 during the American Revolutionary War, and they didn't relinquish the fort until 15 years after the American independence.
It then became an American fort until Congress closed it in 1895.
Today, Fort Mackinac is a museum that tourists can access from Marquette Park at the end of Main Street.
Because the fort is on top of a hill, it's somewhat of a climb to get up there.
But from the fort, you have beautiful views of the city and the lake.
Inside the fort, you can visit the barracks where the soldiers used to live, as well as the officers' quarters.
There are also several cannons pointed at the lake.
And costumed employees reenact war scenes, including firing the cannon several times a day.
Back on Main Street, after visiting the fort, you'll probably want to grab a bite to eat.
And while you're on Main Street, you'll quickly notice that every other storefront is a fudge store.
Mackinac is famous for its fudge. You cannot leave the island without trying it, at least once.
All the stores claim they were voted the best fudge on the island.
So we're not going to recommend any particular brand. We tasted several over the years, and they've always been delicious.
And low calorie too.
Yeah, fudge has been a tradition on Mackinac Island since the late 1800s.
As tourism developed, people on the island were looking for items to sell to tourists.
And early on, fudge was the one that caught on.
What's fun about it is that the stores don't just sell fudge, they also show you how fudge is being made.
You cannot watch them make fudge, experience that delicious smell, and then leave the store empty-handed after that.
And number 8 on our list is Arch Rock.
If you're looking for the best selfie spot on the island, then Arch Rock is the place to go.
As the name indicates, Arch Rock is a see-through rock formation right on the shore of Lake Huron.
4,000 years ago, the water level was a lot higher than it is today. The waves from the lake eroded the base of the cliff, and parts of the cliff collapsed to create the arch we see today.
Arch Rock is not very far from town, and you can easily walk there.
You can also see Arch Rock from underneath when biking on Lakeshore Drive.
But if you want to go on top of the rock from the shore, you'll have to climb more than 200 steps.
The best time to go see Arch Rock is early in the morning at sunrise.
There will be a lot fewer tourists at that time.
If you go there in the middle of the day, once the narrated tours start dropping large crowds of tourists, you'll have to wait your turn to take a selfie.
Another popular selfie spot is Sunset Rock, on the complete opposite end of the island, just behind the inn at Stone Cliff.
Of course, Sunset Rock is much nicer at sunset, but even during the day, it offers some of the best views in the Mackinac Bridge.
Although biking around the island is much easier because it's all flat, exploring the inside of the island is also something we recommend you do.
And that's why it's number 9 on our list.
If you like hiking, Mackinac Island is small enough that you can do it by foot, but it will take you several hours to do that.
If you choose to explore the inside of the island on a bike, you should get one with multiple gears. You don't want to walk your bike when it gets too steep.
The island is pretty woodsy, and there is a nice natural trail with signs with the names of all the trees along the way.
Another interesting rock formation is Sugarloaf. It's a weird rock that sticks out in the middle of the woods.
And the best view of Sugarloaf is from a vantage point called Point Lookout.
Point Lookout is also the best place to see the fall colors.
In addition to Fort Mackinac, there is a second fort on the island called Fort Holmes.
It was built by the British during the War of 1812 on the highest point of the island and was named Fort George at the time.
The Americans later renamed it Fort Holmes, but it was quickly abandoned.
And the fort you can visit today is not the original one, but a reconstruction from 2015.
And 10th on our list is to walk past the Victorian mansions.
Mackinac Island has always attracted rich vacationers from all over the Midwest and beyond. And in the spirit of keeping up with the Joneses, they all try to outdo their neighbors.
Whenever one built a new tower in their house, the next year their neighbor would build an even higher one.
But the result is that there are now these magnificent summer homes, and we love walking past them and just looking at them.
Some of the most spectacular mansions are on Bluff Road, right past the Grand Hotel.
But if you don't want to walk that far, there are also some beautiful mansions right at the end of Main Street.
But Victorian or not, there's plenty of beautiful houses throughout the island. So we hope you enjoyed this video. If you did,
Give it a big thumbs up.
put your comments.
In the comment section below.
All right, we were informed that with the people who live there, 500, and then all the tourists and the people who serve in the summertime, everything, there's a actual section in the middle. It's most 80% of the park, or 80% of the island is state park, but in the middle of the state park is a private section where the actual local people live. They just live in regular two-story or two-bedroom, three-bedroom houses like you would see in Greenville. Not fancy big houses, just regular tract houses. And there's probably 4 or 5 streets there. They have a few horses of their own because they're not allowed to have cars either. Interestingly, the people who stay in the wintertime use snowmobiles, and I'll give you a little treat of that. But they have their dump there, and they recycle, and with 800 horses, you can imagine how much the streets look like. So there are lots of people going around picking up road apples, as we like to call them. And then they take those to the center of the island, which we were informed by one wag that's also where they make the fudge.
No one's seen you.
Yes.
Welcome to Mackinac Island, Michigan's top-rated vacation spot June through October. But what about the other 7 months of the year? We're showing you the inside life of wintertime on Mackinac Island. Check it out. The first reaction you hear about Mackinac Island this time of year is, wait, you can still get to the island? And how? Who exactly are all these guys? On the 8 a.m. commuter ferry, mostly construction workers. And like any other commute, it's a 30-minute ride fueled by smartphones, the occasional newspaper, and across the board, just a lot of coffee. And this mild Michigan winter has been great for construction renovation, and a little different from what you'd expect on the mainland.
Well, the difference would be that we leave snow on the roads.
That's the job for Robert McGreevy, who's plowed snow on Mackinac Island for 20 years.
Basically, we're grooming the roads. We're plowing some of the snow off and leaving some of the snow on, so snowmobiles can get around. And you still have to have it plowed so that emergency vehicles can get around. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
We visited Robert in a week-long stretch without snow on the island. Our first destination was the island airport, normally his top priority when snow does come in.
When the boats quit running, just constant air traffic up here, all the people you saw commuting on the boat today will have to fly over.
But for us, not a whole lot of powder to take care of. So what's a crew to do on Mackinac Island in a full-fledged automobile? you cruise.
I like to take care of the island, and I like to know that people can get around and they can get off the island in the winter. You're a custodian of the island, is what you are, and you're taking care of it. And I like doing that because I love the island so much.
For the majority of island workers, the day ends at about 4 o'clock. That's just enough time to catch the last ferry back to St. Ignace at 4:30, drive.
And then we will go out and we'll start swimming, we'll up swim, we'll warm up. Now we will make sure everybody has their things and we'll ride down to school.
And the same way that adults get around on the island, that's how the school kids commute too.
They can get a certificate when they're 12. They can fly.
Misconceptions to dispel.
First one is usually you have a school. People don't believe we have one. And then other things, anywhere from, what kind of education can you get on an island that small? And I would put, our kids up against any of them.
And they do. Last year, the robotics team went to the World Championship in St. Louis and placed in the top 2%.
So you unhook it from the thing, take it back, unwind it, get it out of there.
For 11th grade teammate Grace Yacober, robotics is just a complementary step to aircraft.
I am a student pilot, and I thought that doing robotics would help me with that because, working with aircraft and, mechanics and stuff like that, I think that helping build a robot kind of benefit in learning some of the skills that I might need to progress with that.
The entire robotics team is comprised of about 10 students, which is pretty big in the grand scheme of the school.
Currently we have 64 students, K through 12.
By grade, that breaks down to the single digits, with the graduating class of 2017 adding up to 4 seniors.
They do get to know each other very well. You kind of have to get along because if you only have 1 or 2 classmates and you're with them the bulk of the day, you pretty much need to get along. And I think that's a good lesson for people too in life, that you're going to be with people at a job or in school or in life or your neighbors that you just have to get along with and make the best of it. And I think our kids do a pretty good job there.
And if you're at a sticky spot with your other 2 classmates, you do what any other high schooler would do. You make friends with the next school over. In this case, that's Beaver Island. On Friday, we went to the airport and picked up the rival boys and girls varsity basketball teams for the homecoming game versus the Mackinac Island Lakers.
So we're in the sleeping situation. This is the room. You bring an air mattress, or some of the schools supply those little gymnastic mats. It's usually a cafeteria, gym floor, sometimes it's a classroom floor.
Of course, there's a lot of action before anybody is heading back to the sleeping quarters. By 6 p.m., the stands are filled with Islanders of all ages. Final score for girls is 34-33, and guys 53-49, both wins for the Mackinac Island Lakers. The victories are topped off with a homecoming dance and just the right size for the school library.
They do get some great experiences here. I'm not sure they fully appreciate it and won't fully appreciate it until they're away from here for a while. They do have some unique opportunities, and for the most part, they take advantage of it educationally, so it's all good.
Reporting from Michigan this morning, I'm Jenny Bouchel.
Pretty amazing. 4 kids in the graduating class. It's like going to the old-fashioned one-room school, riding snowmobiles to school. What an experience when the team from the neighboring school flies in and sleeps on the floor in the classroom or in the gym. What an experience. Interesting place all the way through. I'll give you a little bit of the history. This is a movie that was made in 1944, which has some interesting perspectives in it.
Steamer in the harbor with her engines shot with fire, and our hearts have gone aboard her. the Island of Desire. This time our destination is
Let's see if I can.
Mackinac Island, and the good ship upon which we are about to sail is being guided out into Lake Michigan, just off the Chicago shore. It is a beautiful boat with a cruising speed of 15 knots, typical of the luxury liners that fly the Great Lakes during the summer season, transporting thousands of passengers to the many popular resorts for which the Great Lakes region is famous. Before departing, however, we will take a final look at the skyline of Chicago, picturesquely outlined in the haze of a summer day. We're informed that the correct pronunciation is Mackinac, as it is the French derivation of the original Indian name. The Indians who lived here prior to the arrival of the European explorers believed that this old landmark, known as Arch Rock, was formed by their gods as a natural gateway to the island. Our entrance house of Mackinac has a proud population of about 500 inhabitants who live here the year around. But during the summer season, the influx of visitors swells the population to several thousand. Conspicuously situated on a hill overlooking this quaint little town is the historic old fort, which was originally constructed on the Straits of Mackinac and used by the French in their war with the British, who captured it in 1760 and reconstructed it here about 20 years later. During the War of 1812, it was captured by the Americans, making the Stars and Stripes the third flag to fly over its ramparts. All three have played their part in the history of Mackinac Island. This church was built in 1829 with funds donated by New Englanders, and today some of the good people of Mackinac dress in the costumes of their forefathers for our benefit.
So, any comments? Questions? Okay, our offering, we're going to hear By mir bist du schön. With me, you are beautiful. Feel free to put something in, take something out, and this is the first Sunday of the month, so we'll be doing our fish collection as well.
Tim?
Yes.
Marilyn White just got back from Mackinac.
Did she?
And she's wearing the big shirt that says, "I walked the bridge."
You walked the bridge.
Oh.
That's a long walk. That's a long bridge.
You saw her, Mom.
Yeah, she's a walker. And she walks daily.
And that's something we wanted.
Every Labor Day they do that.
They have a bridge walk.
Just once a year.
Yeah, once a year for a money raiser. It's a fundraiser thing. And we wanted to go under the bridge. I couldn't make that. And we left from Mackinac City, which is the southern end. And my desire was to cross the bridge and leave from St. Ignace, which is at the northern end. But we just had time constraints. It's about 7.5 hours from Greenville to Mackinac. And by the time we got there at 7 or 8 at night, it was too late to do that. And by the next morning, we wanted to get over to the island. So
a future trip.
Excuse me?
A future trip.
Yeah, that's pretty much, it's going to be, because it's that close, as far as I'm concerned, it'll be a yearly trip. And the nice thing is, when you go in September, October, the crowds you saw at Arch Rock, where they had like 5 or 6 horse carriages with all those people, that we took the tour, which is $36 per person, but it's like a 2-hour tour around the island, and your driver, we had 2 of them, one from Romania and one from Hungary. They hire all kinds of foreign kids to get a job over here for the summer. But they have to be like a basic comedian. They talk the whole time. They're giving you narration. They tell you about the cemetery and the houses, and then they tell jokes, and it's just, he's the one that told us about making fudge in the center of the island. So they're just full of all kinds of stories. Another interesting thing, if you notice, all those in the wintertime and in the summer, horseshoes are pretty slippery on asphalt. So they have 2 different shoes. They have an actual rubber, they have a steel shoe that's coated in rubber all the way around that gives them a grip. And those are kind of expensive and they wear out fast. So the other thing they have is what they call a tungsten scratch. They take a welder and they put a little bump at 3 or 4 different places on the shoes, like a roughened thing, and it digs into the asphalt and holds them, which the city doesn't like because it tears up the asphalt and they have to keep resurfacing the roads. But there's a lot of hills there, and you don't want your horse slipping and falling particularly if it's carrying a heavy load. That was the tourist wagons. They weigh almost 5,000 pounds, and that's a pretty good pull for those horses, but they actually have brakes on them, so when they're going downhill, the horse doesn't have to hold it. The carriage we were in is like a regular carriage. There's no brakes on that. When the hames or the forks on the wagon pull forward, there's a strap that holds it back, so it's the horse is what keeps you from going down the hill, so you want to make sure that horse has good footing. Okay, bei mir bist du schön. Closing hymn is 108, My Life Flows On in Endless Song. lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? Great old song. All right. I lit a couple incense sticks. Mackinac is also famous for lilacs. There are more than 20 varieties of lilacs. And they say in June and the first part of July when the lilacs are in bloom, it is unbelievable there. Every place you walk, and you'll notice every house, every building, every place you can plant something, there's a lilac bush growing. And at the time we were there, you couldn't tell what the varieties were, but that was what we were told, is there are at least 20 different varieties. So you can get lilac fudge, you can get lilac incense, you can get lilac candles, you can get lilac soap, you can get lilac body wash, you can pretty much do everything in lilac there if you want. Go forth in simplicity, find and walk the path that leads to compassion and wisdom, that leads to happiness, peace, and ease. Welcome the stranger and open your heart to a world in need of healing. Be courageous before the forces of hate. Hold and embody a vision of the common good that serves the needs of all the people. Our postlude is As Time Goes By. Play it again, Sam. All right, the last picture. The world is best viewed through the ears of a horse. That's become my new favorite saying. And you'll see on the picture on the other side, I don't know if you can read it, it's the Little Stone Church. This is a private residence, the parsonage. For Tara's next temporary service, we are applying to Mackinac Island. So odds of that are pretty slim, but that would be a fantastic place to live. All right, that ends our service at First Universalist in New Madison. Hope you have a good week. If you need help with anything, please let us know. I'll try to see Gordon again this week, and my neighbor's in the hospital at at the Kettering. So I'll be down there visiting him. So if anybody needs a visitation, let me know and we'll try to arrange something. Have a good week. The virus is still out there. Get your booster. The next booster is available now. I would recommend you not get it at the same time as the flu shot because you never know. So get one of them first and then wait a couple weeks and get the other. All right. Have a good week.
Good for me. free echo, what does that make it? Well, it wasn't an echo, it was echoes after. But I heard you back there before I heard you there, where I could block that out, and I heard you well. And then when we got to this, I could hear it better.
Yeah, that's pretty loud.
Yeah.
Well, that's all right, just use it when you need it, turn it off when you don't.
The roads must be terrible there. These roads look like they were all cleaned up, but they have to be closed. Of course we do.
Actually, they have so many people, and mostly it's guys on a bike with a little trailer to show them. You hardly saw any horse manure. The only place I really saw all horse manure was up in the middle of the park, where there's not quite as many people here in the park, but on Main Street, it's a tourist town, so you know they're like on that giant spot.
Yes.
And we walked across the streets and everything else and never really stepped in it, which means, with 400, 800 horses there.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And you saw how many horses were there, and they're all people all the time. So these guys are collecting it, taking it to the middle of the island and recycling it.
I forgot about
What's that?
I forgot to put something in.
You can put it in next week, that's all right.
Remember the time that we were there, because Susie wasn't there. We rode the bicycles, the 8 miles around.
I guess that's too far for a church job. Well, our time is up anyway.
This time our destination is Mackinac, and the good ship upon which we're about to sail is being guided out of the Lake Michigan just off the Chicago shore. It is a beautiful boat with a cruising speed of 15 knots. Transporting thousands of passengers to living on their resorts from the Great Lakes to Incidentally, when we first arrived on this unique island, we thought it was Mackinac, but we were informed that the correct pronunciation is Mackinac, as it is the French derivation of the original Indian name. The Indians who lived here prior to the arrival of the European explorers believed that this old landmark, known as Orange Rock, was formed by their gods as a natural gateway to the island. Our entrance, however, is by way of this harbor. For the more part to inhabit those who picturesque Conspicuous situated on the hill overlooking this place in town is a historical fort, which was originally constructed on the streets of Mackinac and used by the French in their war with the British, who captured it in 1760. About 20 years later, during the War of 1812, it was captured by the Americans. The stars and stripes over its aside from its military importance, Mackinac Island was a busy commercial center. The American Fur Company, established here by John Jacob Astor, founder of the great Astor Foresters. The business was established on the island, built in 1818, and was the home of the chief clerk of the American Fur Company. War, commerce, and religion, all three have played their parts in the history of Mackinac Island. This church was built in 1829 with funds donated by New Englanders, and today some of the good people of Mackinac dress in the costumes of their forefathers for our benefit. Bringing to light a scene from the past. Somehow the past and present seem to link together on this quaint island, where automobiles have not yet been introduced. The only means of getting your transportation is by way of carriages and bicycles. And relax in this seventh yesterday, where even the village blacksmith comes to life as the most important business. We were told that this 80-year-old blacksmith is to sell more than 1,200 horses during the theater season. Home Sweet Home takes on a new meaning in this unique little realm, where the simple life.
Does everybody see Jimmy?
Thank you for putting that up.
I love that because it's part of us. It is.
When the Chesapeake missionaries first came here, they took lilacs, which they since grown and spread throughout the island. In the month of June, the perfume of these lilacs fills the air with fragrance.
I brought University to Madison. You realize how much stuff we get involved in
We need that in the library. He did it as an observer. He wrote a history class.
Apparently, the chief purpose of Mackinac Island is to provide rest and relaxation for the thousands of visitors. And in this respect, the grand old game of golf comes in for its share of popularity.
That's why Christmas was
Now we come to that institution, justifying the all the grandest of grand hotels, the largest of its kind in the world. The hotel property itself comprises 500 acres of land. The story of this famous hotel reads their chapter, and it's registered in the Universalist as the equivalent of an international who's who. We're sitting on the longest porch in the world. We are reminded of a day in 1887 when that famous American statesman, John During this boarding dedication speech, this institution is more than a hotel. It is a symbol of the grandness of commercial hospitality. And may the stars and stripes continue to wave over it as long as it retains that grand tradition. Several generations have passed away since Johnny Depew dedicated this hotel. But we feel the generation that dances here today is enjoying the American way of life in keeping with the grand tradition. Attractions on Mackinac Island is the unique swimming pool on the hotel grounds.
I grew up in a town 650, so.
Oh.
But on Sundays, like today, we can find any place to go eat in town now. Back there, I'm not gonna back up, so that's unusual.
I go to Ironburst and get the chicken before Roberta gets it all. I'm here right now.
We have a police department, now we've had a contract to carve down sheriff for years. Pay about $3 million, they're 24, but you know, it's pros and cons to that too. Because you got a sheriff, you got a police officer, and you get him about too. Some of them used to give them all kinds of shit, you know, they can't do that stuff anymore. But it's changed too much to me. Elevators, we had 2 elevators at one time, they're both gone.
Don't have much businesses in
Don't
town.
have any businesses in town.
That's tomato cannery.
Yes.
Cigar factory. We're owned by the Max brothers.
Beauty shop, 2.
The Max is an agency. 2 German families that came here. Very interesting. Their connection probably have a Southern European brother they got from Cuba or wherever. And they probably do something about it.
Well, these are tobacco only. I mean,
Go ahead. It was an old brick building. It hadn't even a brick history.
Anything that they invented, we did. I don't know what's happened, but we did, and we took care of it.
It was on Jefferson Street, the cigar factory.
And then, of course, the store up, if you don't sell it.
Yeah, I'm gonna do ours.
We actually here. You know, my sister called.
They're blacktopping the streets now. They're all done now.
Yeah, it was just